Susie Larson. I started out as a speaker and then a writer, and now most of my time goes to radio. So I would say most of my behind-the-scenes work is radio and writing, and then I do speak nationally, but I keep that on a short leash because you can only do so many things with your life, right? And my strength is limited at times, so that's kind of what I do ministry-wise. I self-published my first book in 2000, and I actually had gone to a writer's conference because we'd walked through some pretty significant fires and storms as a family, and a number of people, when I started to speak, said, "You've got to write that down." And I had a secret desire to do that. I journaled a lot, but it was just a tremendous fear of just failure. That was just like a Goliath that I would have to slay. I couldn't even imagine it. So I went to my first writer's conference and just did the one-on-one and asked, I think it was an editor, about it, and he says, "Well, first of all, almost nobody will publish memoirs." And he said, second of all, he said, "You'd have to be Billy Graham or dead, and you're neither. So not a good idea." I'm like, okie dokie. So I went home, but I still felt the nudge. So I just did some research, and I decided to self-publish my first book. It just was more of a memoir style. Went back to another writer's conference and got hooked up with Jesse Floria. And that was, over 20 years ago, and he's a friend, and he's on our faculty now, but he was with Focus on the Family, and we made a great connection, and I started writing articles for Focus, and I probably did that for off and on for about 7 years, and then I got busy, and and then I want to say I was the next publishing door opened. I went to another writers conference, and I was asking questions just about the industry. And the guy that I met with, who's a stationery publisher, asked me, "If you were to design a journal, what would it be?" And so I did a listening prayer journal. And it sold really well. It was just great. And then after that, I was speaking at a women's conference, and I didn't know, but Harvest House's editor was in the audience, and she actually approached me, and she said, "I love that topic. Would you get a proposal to me?" And I still was new enough that I didn't know what a big deal that was, so I had to go home and look up what a proposal was. And back then, if I remember right, I had to go to the library, can you believe it, to look up, templates for proposals and those kinds of things. And I smile like, "I'll do it, I can do it." I had no idea what I was doing, and wrote the proposal and got my first traditional book contract. So I'm just about to start book number 18 now, and it's been an amazing journey, and it's not easy, it's long, it takes a lot of patience, a lot of grit, but it's worth it. I mean, I really feel like I'm an introvert, so it's like this allows your books to be missionaries and go places where you probably couldn't go, so yeah. Well, I have such a deep conviction about multiplication, about stewardship. And I read the scripture, there's so much in there about stewardship. So it's not just about you living the dream or accomplishing your goals. It's what can you pass on to other people? How can you mobilize people? And when I just saw what God did and the way that He used my little voice and my little story to mobilize and help people, I just thought, how many other people out there need their stories told? And working at the radio station, I want to say it was probably 7-8 years ago, I went to my boss and said, "We need to do a writers conference." We're in the Midwest. Some of the major conferences, the bigger ones, are on the coasts. And there are some in the Midwest, but they're probably smaller. But I was looking at faculty, and I'd already served on some faculty and seen some, some success in this realm. So I just thought, we can do this. I really believe we can do this. And I made the pitch, and they weren't quite ready to jump full-fledged into that, so we did a writers contest for a number of years, and those were smashing successes. And then in due time, the writers conference was born, and I keep thinking of it just because I know the experience I had going to some writers conferences. Sometimes you see, I want to be careful, you see pride in certain leaders going, "If you do what I do, you'll get where I am." And that's super nauseating to me because it's so intimidating as it is to go to a writers conference. So what I wanted to do is, if I had input into it, to create a scenario where everybody comes humbly to serve. And this really is about stewardship, because I want it to be a dream machine where people come who are facing down their fears, daring to take next steps, and we can encourage them every step of the way. And then, I tried to just imagine, what if people come, they make a divine connection, God opens the door, they get a book out there, and what if that book changes the way families pray? What if that book changes the way way somebody approaches their own calling. I mean, you talk about stewardship and fruitfulness and faithfulness. It just felt like a no-brainer to me, and it's worth the time. And our faculty, they don't get paid hardly anything to do this, but they don't do it for that reason. They do it to come in and serve, to help equip and mobilize people to live out their call. One of my favorite quotes from Arthur Willis, I think his name, he said, "God is not merely concerned with what we do, but with why we do it. A great act may be robbed of all of its value in the sight of God if done with the wrong motive." And you're going to find a mixed bag of motivations when people come. Some, under the guise of Christianity, are like, I'm making a name for myself. I'm going to get famous. I see potential here. I see a gig here. And I'm going to build a platform under myself, There's others who are like, this thing is not going away from me. I'm terrified. I don't want to be lumped together with self-ambitious people who are making it all about them, but I can't not do this, And then there's others going, already defeating themselves. They come, but they're like, this will never work. I don't belong here. And they commit the sin of comparison the whole time. So everybody has differing expectations. So if I could lump all of them together, to say, no matter who you are, why you're doing this process will purify your heart. It will humble you, and it really does separate what you're in it for, because God loves his children, and first and foremost, he wants pure hearts, and he wants a pure offering, right? And so depending on where your heart is at, will kind of determine what your journey may look like. So a realistic expectation is expect to be humbled, expect to find God's faithfulness, expect this to take much longer than you expect it to look, and maybe look at it instead as a step in the process to build relationships, to seek God. I know at this age now, my kids are grown, having just been around the mountain a few times, every massive breakthrough, every major breakthrough in my life came one nuanced move at a time. Even suddenly moments were an accumulation of prayers and steps of obedience. And I think if we can step back and go, this is a step in the process. I'm going to humble myself. I'm going to stay teachable. I'm going to not look at people as a means to an end. I mean, you just notice that right away. People are like, I want to get by you because you're a stepping stone to where I want to go. Versus someone going, tell me your story and what's it like, and what advice would you have for someone in my place? Such a different approach. So if you could come humble, come teachable, and just expect it to take longer, and then trust that God is going to transform you as you go, I think that's the best way to approach this conference. If you're coming going, I expect my breakthrough, I expect a publishing contract, I expect people to see how amazing and wonderful I am, your expectations will be dashed, because we all have things to learn. I mean, I'm about to start a next book. I feel like a kindergartner. I don't know what I'm doing. What am I going to do? I feel like I'm learning all over again. And I think we've got to keep a heart of reverence before God, and just not ever presume we know it all. We just don't. You jump into the sea, basically, and you see all these people who are further along than you. It is just so tempting to compare. It's so tempting to go, what am I doing? There are, over 4 million books on Amazon, and the enemy will rail that in your ear over and over again. But I would just say, keep your eye on the prize, which is Jesus. Keep your eye on him and just trust him. I mean, every great work that's ever accomplished is one step at a time. One step at a time, and you will have a mountain under your feet. And we have stories from people who've attended these conferences each year, taken the advice of the editors that they've met with. They're in it for the long game, and they're seeing some of their dreams come true. So if you could, again, just give yourself permission to be a work in progress. Do not let the voices keep you from taking next steps. The one thing you don't want to do is get to the end of your life and be able to finish this statement, I wish I would have, 100 times over. And really, it's not just about you and your dream. It is about the bigger kingdom story that God is writing. And for me, that helps me persevere. If I make it about me, then it's like you start to question your motives. You start to get insecure because you see someone else. But if I step back and go, you know what? There's a greater kingdom story that God's writing, and I'm a part of it. And so what is my call? Because it's going to require faith. It's going to require grit. That helps me persevere in the battle, because I know it isn't about me. It is about him, so that he gets glory. But I'm a part of moving the purposes forward. That puts accountability in my heart. That puts faith in my heart. So that would be my challenge to you. Step back, see yourself in the bigger story, and keep taking the next steps. And ask God repeatedly. I ask him all the time, give me a vision for my next place of promise. And what do I need to do today to move in that direction? I just want to say your voice matters. Your voice matters, and the world needs your influence. So do not let fear have the last say. What stands out to me about this conference really is the humility with which the faculty serves, because we've really purposely tried to set that tone. And so even when we hear comments that sound cynical, because sometimes people who've been in the business a long time, they can sound cynical and tired, we kind of try to redirect that, because we want things to be fresh and we want expectancy and hope to make a comeback, especially in our day when people are so desperate. Another thing that I think is amazing about the conference is, just when it was time to really birth this thing, I looked across, the country and just tapped into some of my good friends who are A-list faculty members. You'll find them at top-level conferences, but we put it together on a Friday and a Saturday, so we shortened the conference with A-list faculty, which makes it so accessible and so affordable. So that combination to me makes this a stellar conference, not to mention it is on the campus of University Northwestern, St. Paul, which is beautiful and breathtaking, and it's in the summer. So I just think, what's not to love? I mean, you really need to just join us.